Joined by former Vancouver Canuck and TSN hockey analyst, the one and only Mr. Frank Corrado. How are we doing today, Frankie?
Good, guys. Listen, I know you guys like to ask me some questions, but I think I got to start by asking you guys a question.
Oh, okay. Fire away.
I'm not new to Canucks Twitter. I think for a long time I distanced myself from it. But now that I'm following the team more closely, I have to take an interest in it and what's going on. And that's my question to you guys today, is what the hell is going on over there?
Oh, wow.
Because Canucks Twitter is so back, it's not even funny. It is so back. There's pictures of players at the bar, and there's debates about that. Then the team's losing 10-0 in a preseason game. Guys are getting carved out by the coach already. Like, Canucks Twitter is so bad.
Undefeated. Canucks Twitter is undefeated, as we always say.
We'll never know. They'll never know.
You texted me about the photo of the players out at the bar in Victoria having a drink at training camp. And what's your take? You think that's just offside?
It's just a weird thing to do. It's like, let the guys have a night to just, they're just having a couple beers. We don't need to publish it. I'll tell you what, man. I remember when I was first in Vancouver, surprise, surprise, we were at the Roxy one night, and I saw a phone come out, and this person, I guess, forgot to turn the flash off, and someone caught that out of the corner of their eye. Let's just say that phone was confiscated and was very close to getting smashed off that carpet floor at the Roxy.
Oh, no kidding. Close. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, what happens in the Roxy stays.
Also, what I don't get about that shot in the pub is they were just sitting down at chairs talking. Like, if they were dancing on tables, maybe there's a little bit more of a notable moment there. They're just there.
The thing is, when players go out in public, you're out in public, so you have to understand that there will be members of the public who are going to notice you, recognize you, and yes, in today's day and age, take cell phone photos. Now, for me, it would be, and this goes back to guys like Alan Page and Bill Russell, who always talked about this. Like, you want my autograph? You want my photo? How about having a moment instead? Come on up, introduce yourself, say hello. We don't bite. We'll have a good moment there where we'll have a conversation for a second or two. To me, that would be more
transactional.
Rewarding.
Give me your autograph is way less special than having like a 3-minute conversation with the person.
Or even 30 seconds or so. Like, that's something that you can. I mean, that's something you can tell your buddies or your kids or whatnot. Hey, I talked to Elias Pettersson today. Hey, I talked to JT Miller today. As opposed to, here's a surreptitious shot of Canucks at a bar having a beer.
Here's a picture of them. Here's proof, by the way, online. Anyways, because so bad.
Because as Roberto once said to us, and we're going to get into Mr. Luongo here in a second, alongside, of course, his longtime running mate, Corey Schneider. He never had a single bad experience with a Canucks fan in person around town. And that's because most fans, when they see a great NHL player or any NHL player, don't go up and start carving them or anything like that. That's for keyboard warriors, right? When they see them in person, it's actually a really positive experience.
Yeah. Well, that's the humanity in Twitter in total. Yeah.
It takes a lot of stones to go up to a stranger who is a celebrity and say something negative to them. So
I completely agree. Like, my experiences, whether it's been in Vancouver or at home here, it's just like, hey, noticed you there. Just wanted to say hi. Watched you when you were on the team. Great stuff. Like, no one comes up to you. It's like, you stink. If anything, if they were going to do that, you can kind of tell. There's a little tell. It's like, you kind of make eye contact with the person, then a little light bulb goes off. You can see their eye kind of go higher like that. And you're like, but they're not going to say anything. I think they think I stink, so they're not going to say anything.
That's awesome.
Rick Tocchet pretty well. Now, my take is he's picking on Dakota Joshua for one of two reasons. Number one, people view Joshua as one of his guys. He played well for him at the end of last season, called him a 20-goal scorer, and decided to message to the group, look, I'm going to go at this guy, which means none of you were safe, or that he just had a bad summer and there are repercussions for that. But he said Joshua had to pick it up and that he's fighting for a job, Frankie, which is, like I think he's on the team by any way you slice it, but maybe there's upward mobility of third line. Maybe he's 13th forward if things go poorly. But you do the talk and interpretation on these Joshua comments for me.
I was a little surprised to see those comments, because when I think of Dakota Joshua, I'm like, that's that's a Tocchet kind of guy that works hard, good engine, kind of feisty, not shy to get his nose dirty in the game. But I think you're onto something with your first take on the interpretation. And I'm not going to go so far as to say like he's calling out his guy because he can handle it. I'll put it to you this way. There's so many meetings with the brass, whether it's the coaches, the management, any kind of player personnel people. They're having all these meetings all summer. And if Tocchet is constantly going into those meetings and talking up this player, being like, I really like this guy, I have big plans for him, and that's the constant messaging that you are putting forward in those meetings, and then he goes out to camp and doesn't play so well and doesn't look good, and then you go back into a meeting and guys are like, well, the guy you were talking up all summer, by the way, doesn't look very good. He's not gotten off to a great start. He's not playing with energy. He's not getting his nose there. He can't play with the puck. And if that starts happening in the meeting, that's what you get with Tocchet in the media, kind of calling out the guy, being like, that's the way I would interpret it. It's like, I've been pushing for this guy all summer, talking him up. Then he goes out there and his performance is subpar. Like, now you're going to hear it from me in a little more of a harsh way. Like, let's get going here, because Matt, I do agree. I think that's a Tocchet kind of guy, if you want to use that quote unquote interpretation. And he does want him to be his guy. But if he's not going to play well enough, everyone else around Tocchet is going to be like, well, I thought this guy was better. I thought that guy was better. And eventually, at the end of the day, your play does the talking. So I agree with you there. I think it's a little bit of a message sent. And I don't think it's like, hey, I hate you as a player now. I think it's, I like you as a player, but I see you as this, and you can be this, but you have to do it for me.
Expectation is it's a huge thing, isn't it? I mean, going into a training camp, the player has expectations of himself. The coach has expectations of a player. The GM has expectations of both coach and player. I mean, it's a cocktail that can backfire, can blow up. It's a dangerous thing almost.
And they're all so intertwined, right?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the individual performances tie into what is going to go on with the team. Like, I imagine, like, listen, it's preseason, right? You lose a game 10-0. I don't care what roster you iced. It's not a good feeling for anyone involved. There's so much prep work that goes into a training camp in the preseason. And to go get blown out 10-0 like that, I think it's one of those things where something needs to change here with the team if they want to be in the playoffs, if they want to be knocking on the door. So it's like, okay, you can't really go after the team performance, because ultimately you iced that roster. You chose to send that roster to Calgary to get the door blown out. But what you can do, like Matt said, is pick someone that maybe you think can handle it. You think like has that genetic kind of makeup to withstand it, and say, hey man, like, your performance needs to elevate, because that's going to elevate someone above you's performance. And ultimately that's going to keep going up and up the ladder. And as a group, that's how you kind of get better and achieve more. But I will say, like, the roster that they sent to Calgary, they should have sent a better roster. I'll be 100% honest with you. Like, I know it's the first game and it's, you're on the road, but Calgary had some pretty good players in the lineup. And I don't think you're doing a service to many of the guys that actually played in that game for Vancouver, because how do you evaluate them now? They lost 10-0. They barely had an AHL roster. How are you going into a meeting now evaluating anyone that was on that ice? The game was over before anything even happened. So I think that was a mistake on their part. Like, you need to have a little more of a veteran presence if you want to evaluate some of the younger players, put them in a position to do well, and they didn't do that.
Yeah, and Tocchet has said they're going to address a better lineup tonight in Edmonton and tomorrow in Seattle. Frankie, you've been that guy on the spot in training camp and in preseason, the guy who could, start on the big team or be one of the final cuts. For those bubble guys, what are the do's, what are the don'ts here as you go through preseason in the final couple weeks before the season opener and the roster deadline?
That was, you know what? That was my whole life, basically, in the NHL, every training camp. I don't think I ever went into a training camp really feeling like I was solidified. There's such a laundry list of do's and don'ts. It's funny, though, like when you ask me that question, the very first thing I think of is game related. And you know how in Seinfeld, George Costanza, I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan, but George Costanza, he had this thing going where he would say something funny, get a little bit of a laugh out of everyone in the room, and he'd say, "All right, I'm out. I'm out of here. You guys have a great day." And he was gone. And he constantly left this good taste in everyone's mouth. It's almost, I kind of thought about that as like my shift to shift in whether it was in a scrimmage or a preseason game. It was like, okay, I don't need to be out here for 55 seconds on this shift. But at the 35-second mark, if I just made a nice outlet pass and we got out of the zone and I'm like, I'm going to go for a change. It was like that constant feedback loop of like, let's just hit a single here. Let's hit a double here. And let's not get into trouble. Let's not, because it's early in the season, conditioning is still, getting up to par. It's like, let's just keep leaving a good taste in the mouth of whoever's watching. That's one of the things. And I think just, your body language around the rink is really important. How positive are you? How upbeat are you? How low maintenance are you? All that kind of stuff. Because if you're going to be a bubble player, if you're going to be a 13th forward, you're going to be a 7th or an 8th defenseman, you're in no position to be any kind of headache for anyone. So you just need to slide under the radar, be as quiet as possible, and just let your play do the talking. And ultimately, you go out there, you keep kind of building good shift by good shift, good period by good period. You kind of figure they sit around in those meetings after and they're like, yeah, it was pretty good. I didn't notice anything bad. In fact, it's like, his whole kind of mindset and attitude would lead us to believe this would be a good guy to have up here, whether it's on the first call-up basis or the extra guy basis. So life on the bubble is interesting. There's a little more thought involved than people might think.
Yeah. In third pair defenseman, fourth line, a single is a home run. A double is a grand slam, right? Because all you're trying to do is stay even with the other side and make sure you're not the guy who scored on it.
I think you should have gone one step further after a good shift, like in the early second, just like walked off the ice. Just be like, no, I'm good. I put forth here. I'm done here.
Drop the mic.
I told this to my daughter. She was in tryouts the other day, and she was like, it was a long tryout process. And I was like, you know what? Score a goal early and then fake an injury and then get off the ice. And you know, you've done your thing, it just close on a high note. And sure enough, she scored early. And so I was warning all the parents, she's about to get injured.
She's getting injured, and we're getting out of here. We've got to pick up dinner on the way home.
She didn't.
Dad's got plenty of errands to run here.
Here's the ultimate formula. Okay, you get out there, it's like the first period, you have a good first shift, you get in on the forecheck if you're a forward, D-man, couple nice breakout passes, whatever the case may be. You take a 5 in a game and you get kicked out in the preseason. In the meeting after, they're like, we got to put him in for another game, I guess.
We got to see him. Yeah.
We saw him for 12 minutes, so we got to get him in again, right?
Frank, we want to move on here. Your former teammate, beloved former Vancouver Canuck goaltender Corey Schneider has announced his retirement. You were right there for all of it. Schneider coming on up, and of course Schneider and Luongo. And who's your goalie tonight, AV? The guy who gives me the best chance to win. What can you say about Corey Schneider as a teammate?
I mean, first of all, just one of the nicest guys you could ever meet, and he was like that every single day. Like, you talk about low maintenance and guys that, aren't a problem. It was like, this guy was so happy to come to the rink every day to do his work. Actually, I had a little, my first NHL game, Corey Schneider played that game against Chicago. I remember leaving the rink in the morning for morning skate. Schneider must have said something to me like, good luck tonight, have fun. It was nice. And Rolly Melanson was right there. And we were in the lounge, and Schneids walks out, because he's leaving the rink. He's going to his car. I'm just waiting for a ride, I think. And Rolly kind of like goes to me, goes, you're in good hands tonight. You got one of the best goalies in the world behind you tonight. He goes, just think about that. I'm like, yeah, you're right. He goes, so have fun. Don't worry about it. Go play. And I'm like, it was true at the time. Corey was one of the best goaltenders in the world. He was probably one of the most underrated goaltenders at the world. That would have been the lockout shortened season. And after the game, when we won, we beat Chicago 3-1. I went to go, do the fist bump to Corey after the game, and he had the game puck in his glove, and he put it in my hand. He goes, "Great job out there. That's for you. Take that home." And I mean, I still have the puck. It was just a classy individual. The way him and Roberto were able to handle all that, basically being on a team with two bona fide number one goaltenders, and the class that they both had was pretty incredible to see. And even just, the hard work. Like, there were nights where Corey wasn't playing, and Rolly would put him through the car wash, with the healthy scratches after practice. I'm sure you guys were there. You saw, like, it wasn't like, "Hey, morning skate is finished. You're a really good goalie. Get out of here and hit the showers." It was like, "No, Roberto's playing tonight. Like, there's a full on car wash waiting for you after practice." And so, I mean, the work ethic was next level, and he was just an outstanding guy to be around.
If I had a nickel for every time I saw Corey Schneider walk into that dressing room, absolutely drenched head to toe, because here was the thing. Rolly was brought in to be a boss. Roberto sort of had like caretaker buddy goaltender coaches before that. Rolly was brought in to be a boss, and boy was he ever. What a marvelous story, Frank. And, we had him on the show last year, and we said, "Corey, do you have any regrets? You spent some of your prime years on the bench behind Roberto, got a late start. Then all of a sudden you're the guy who gets traded to New Jersey, not Roberto. And then all of a sudden, you start getting the health problems." And he gave us an answer, Blake. Do you remember this? He's like, "Guys, I played 400 NHL games. I made all this money, made all these friends, teammates, had all these amazing experiences. I don't regret a single thing. Don't anybody ever feel sorry for me."
Yeah.
Because I've had a blast
It's a perfect answer
in my hockey career. I mean, he's genuinely one of the most authentic, down-to-earth, funny, smart guys I've ever been had the privilege to be associated with and cover over the years.
You bring up an interesting comment, though, when you say that you went out in front of him and you got this reassurance that you're playing in front of the best goalies in the world. Did you ever get the feeling with backups that were a little less decorated that I got to do something different tonight because we don't have the backstopping of a number one? Because that's a cliche that gets trotted out a lot, that teams play different in front of the backup because maybe they're trying to do something differently. How important is the backup to guard against that?
I would say in the American League, a little more. In the NHL,
really?
Yeah, in the NHL, it never really crossed my mind. I think in the NHL, it was one of those things like, both these guys are fantastic goalies. They're in the NHL. I mean, I think of some of the backups I would have played in front of, and if you want to call them that, they're all great goalies. Corey Schneider, Eddie Lack. I think when I got to Toronto, there was Jonas Enroth, who had a really good NHL career, Curtis McElhaney, even some of the younger guys like Garrett Sparks, I think I was just always in a position where the backup goalie was a really good goalie. The only time you think about that, I'll be honest with you, is when you're in the minors and maybe you got a goalie called up and you're playing a back-to-back, and some guy comes up from the coast and he's got a white bucket and he's got all white and you're like, this guy just got in with like some kind of car service from Kalamazoo, and we have no idea who he is.
Yeah,
he's going in net tonight. And that's the only time you think about it. In the NHL, they're all good goalies.
He's got brown pads, non-colored team pads.
This guy will open up, like he opens up his hockey bag, and you can tell like they don't have a great ventilation system.
Yeah.
And it's just a different odor than what we got cooking in the American League.
Yeah, I will say this. Equipment guys around the league made great progress on the odor over my tenure covering the National Hockey. Because when I first started going into rooms, particularly the visitors' room at the ACC, there was a pungency. I mean, it was a little bit Green Panther, Ron
Did
Jeremy,
you see
stinging the nostrils, and it's much, much better now.
Bar Down did that tour of the UND, the North Dakota dressing room, with the ventilated hangers in each stall. Have you ever seen that in the NHL? That each stall was ventilated?
A lot of the home rooms will have that. I don't know about some of the newer visitor rooms are doing that. There's a few I haven't seen, but yeah, that's a popular thing, and like good. And clean the equipment too. I remember like all the teams I played for were very diligent about making sure the equipment got cleaned. Very grateful for that.
That's the sort of insight you get from Frank Corrado, ladies and gentlemen.
ventilation.
So nice to have him on weekly at Sekeres and Price. We're talking. Corey was scheduled to join us today. He's feeling sick, so we're going to try and catch up tomorrow. We're going to pass along your story, Frank.
Awesome.
Okay?
This great clip brought to you by, wait for it, Great Clips. It's going to be great.